Now let's get started talking tonight about talking to your kids about drugs and alcohol. And our expert for the evening is Dr. Maria Isabel Tapia. Welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Hi, Sierra. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, of course. We are going to pick your brain tonight. But before we do, I want to tell our audience a little bit about you because you have a vast experience and knowledge base. So I'm excited to tell you that Dr. Tapia is a licensed professional psychotherapist with over 25 years of experience. And she's conducted research at the University of Miami and in private practice with clients. And she's dedicated her career to the prevention and treatment of adolescent substance use. So exactly what we're talking about tonight: behavioral problems, sexual risk behaviors, and mental health with Hispanic families. And in her role as a senior researcher and clinical expert of evidence-based practices, she has trained and supervised agencies and therapists in the US, Latin America, and Europe. I don't know how you even have time to do all of that, but it's amazing what you're doing. And she's also participated in groundbreaking NIH-funded behavioral clinic trials. And she's authored articles and book chapters and minority HIV, drug abuse, mental health, LGBTQ issues, and taking into consideration the cultural context and the functioning of the Hispanic family. So relevant for just even life here in Miami. So she was also the recipient of a fellowship grant from the Center of Human Rights and Social Justice to conduct research with lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender populations. So she is not only an expert in her field, but she's also conducting a lot of research. So we're so excited to have you tonight, and we are going to pick your brain. So are you ready for this?
I hope my brain stays alive.
I love it. It will. It will. We're going to keep you on your toes.
You're going to keep it that way with you.
We're going to keep you on your toes. Well, I'm so excited. And again, audience, welcome. If you have a question at any point for our expert, drop it in the Q&A feature. I see Houston, Miami, Homestead, Palm Beach, Cutler Bay, Dallas, Texas. So fun. People are listening from all over. So we're going to get started with, let's open it up and just talk about just kind of a big why. Like, why do adolescents experiment with drugs? And talk to us about the best age to start talking to your children about this.
Well, adolescents use drugs for many reasons, right? Sometimes it's out of curiosity. They want to see what, the fast is all about. They want to drink alcohol. They want to taste the alcohol. They want to experiment with marijuana and other drugs that are available. But sometimes they want to be cool. They want to do it with their friends. And sometimes they do it because they have issues with self-esteem. Mm-hmm. They have mental health problems that might force them to start using something to see how they change their mood. Mm-hmm. They also can do it out of grief when there are changes in the family. For example, divorce, when parents are moving, when they had to go to a new school, or when they are feeling rejected by their peers. So it is very common for them to find solitude and comfort by experimenting with drugs. So, but the good news, and I always like to have a little bit of a good news is that the substance abuse trend for 2022 has held steady, which means that it hasn't increased dramatically, it hasn't decreased either. And that is a good news. But I will say that for example, two-thirds of high school students will use alcohol or will try alcohol at some point. That's almost 7 out of 10 kids will do it in high school. And also, even in middle school, 8% of middle schoolers will try marijuana. By the time they get to high school, that might increase to 22%. So, they do it for many, many reasons, basically, Sierra.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I love just the statistics that you're sharing too, because that really paints a picture on it broadly of all the context that we're dealing with. Some of us have kids this age. Some of us are looking towards having children this age. So the statistics are really helpful. What do you feel like is there, I heard you say middle school. So like, what's the best age you feel like to start talking to your children about drugs? And as a parent, how would you kind of broach that subject?
Right. That is a good question. Today, we have 9-year-olds that are looking favorably about using alcohol. They think alcohol is cool. They've seen it on TV. They seen their own parents drinking. So they don't think that alcohol is bad, for example. And I'm talking about 9 years of age. And of course, they watch a lot of TV sometimes, and they see this problem. So as soon as your child asks you a question about drugs, you should answer. You shouldn't say, when you get older, or pretending that you didn't hear, because sometimes we as parents, we don't want to answer the hard questions, right?
That's
But
right.
when the child starts to have autonomy and it starts to go out with friends, especially middle school, that transition between 5th grade to 6th grade in middle school is tough for some parents and for the kids, because they more than likely came from a very small school, and all of a sudden they go into a larger middle school when they're going to have kids that are 14 years of age and they 12. There is a big difference at that age between a 12-year-old to a 14, 15-year-old, right?
Yeah,
And they
that's
are
right.
together in the same environment. So, middle school is a good age to start, approaching the subject, or when they start to go out with friends, you are allowing them to be unsupervised with the friends. They go to the movie theaters, or, they go to a friend's house to play. They spend more time away from you. So that might be a good time to, explore that topic.
That's good. That's good. I love what you said too about, don't play it off of, I'll tell you later when you're older. I remember someone giving me the parental wisdom of, you want to be the source of knowledge for your kids as long as you can. Because the moment that they kind of learn somewhere else, like, oh, mom doesn't know, dad doesn't know, it's like, oh, I want to stay approachable with my kids. So I love what you said about, don't push it down, don't kick the can down the road if they
Yeah,
breach the subject.
sometimes we do that either because we don't know a lot about the topic, or
Yeah.
we are scared, or we think sometimes, oh, that's never going to happen to our child.
Yeah.
That's
right.
the parents are usually in the two extremes. They
Mhm.
very we call them the helicopter parents, that are on
Mhm.
top of the kids all the time, and they have to sneak out. They have to lie to you in order to do whatever. Or the other extreme, that that won't happen to me because my
Yeah.
child is home and doesn't have any friends.
Yeah.
Kids need to have friends, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we're seeing an spectrum of positions around when is the best time. But more than likely when the child, goes to middle school or have friends, or, is developing their own autonomy.
Yeah, that's good. As a therapist, talk to us about, what should we say to our kids? What should we not say? Are there things about alcohol we should not say to them when having those conversations?
Right. Much more than know what to say is how we say it
Mm.
and when do we say it.
Yeah.
Because if you're the child, you're not going to watch a program on TV and tell your child or your adolescent, come and sit down that I need to talk to you about drugs. More than likely, they're going to say, no, I already know that. I don't want to talk to you. So you need to create the environment and the conditions for you to have that conversation. It could be, when both of you are relaxed, when you are
Mhm.
having a good time, that's when the child is more than likely to engage with you.
Yeah.
And you can ask open-ended questions. You can say, what do you think? Maybe you're watching a movie, for example, and you see a topic related to drug use, and you can say, what do you think about that? Or when you're driving and unfortunately you see a homeless in the street, you can say, well, what are your thoughts about it? And start the conversation. It's not like you need to sit down because I need to tell you this, X, Y, and Z. They more than likely, they don't going to pay attention to you. Or sometimes you have a neighbor or a family member, more than likely, that has been affected by drug use. And you can open that conversation, how how are you feelings around that? And how you would like him or her or the brothers, whoever, not to, try with drugs, because the same thing happened to cousin Eddie when he started
Mhm.
using at age 14. So you have to find the right moment. You have to have a good communication with your child. If you don't have, I think that's the basics.
Yeah,
If you
that's
don't
good.
have a good communication, it's hard to approach the subject
Yeah.
straight.
That's great. I love what you said too about those open-ended questions. Just like, well, what do you think about that? To kind of see where they are. And I guess that's probably helpful too in speaking to them in like an age appropriate way. Do you have any advice on, obviously this conversation is going to look different with a middle schooler versus a kid who's you're sending off to college. So what's the best way to do that in an age appropriate way?
Yeah, language is very important because the terms that are the kids are using these days for the different drugs, parents may not be familiar with. So maybe you need to be familiar with the terminology. Sometimes parents start going through their kids' stuff to the back pocket, back packs, and they find things, right? And they get so scared because they had no idea what that is. So first of all, educate yourself.
Yeah.
There is a slang language to refer to drugs.
Mhm.
So when you talk to the child, you could be more educated about what's going on in the community. What are the, the drugs that are available for the most part at this age, between 12 to 15 is alcohol, marijuana, vaping.
Yeah.
And we see in the fentanyl now that is deadly, that they sell it in pills. So, you need to first of all educate yourself and use a language, and using open-ended questions, hearing what the child is saying without making judgment. Because a lot of kids will tell you marijuana is natural, right? Marijuana doesn't harm anybody. And you don't want to start arguing that that's not true. The moment you start with the argument with the child, that's it. You put a barrier there. The child is not going to talk to you. You want to see, well, help me more, tell me more. How is it that it's not detrimental to your health? Tell me, what are the effects? What are the side effects? Do you know? So get that information and see how they know about this topic rather than you lecturing them. I mean, one thing with parents, and especially Hispanic parents, is the lecturing, right? I hear a lot of parents saying, oh my God, I talked to him or her forever and something sticks. Let me tell you, after a few minutes of you sermonizing, you see how your child is listening to you like this. They tune you out. They completely tune you out. So you have to, sort of create that opportunity for a conversation where both of you can have, an interactive conversation.
That's great. I love just even the language that you use of tell me more, to keep that conversation going instead of like you said, arguing with their point, or maybe they really go way off, but like, tell me more, just to keep them engaged and talking. I think that is a great skill and tool to just keep the conversation going. We received a question from our audience that said, what about if your child asks, is it okay for me to try it? Like, how would you approach that?
Well, first of all, I will congratulate that child and say, thank you for trusting me with that. Because the child is trusting you, is giving you information. And if you react like, forget it, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to send you to live with your father or your grandma if you touch something, the child is going to go 10 miles away from you.
Yeah. It's not a safe place anymore to talk about it.
Absolutely. Or so you want to say to the child, thank you for trusting me. I really appreciate you coming with that information. Let's talk about it. And drugs make people feel good. That's why people use it. Don't deny that if the child is, for example, is shy and drinks alcohol, that child is going to be the life of the party. That without alcohol, he or she may not be. So, what are the underlying causes that, you want to use drugs? Is it your self-esteem because you feel, sometimes they feel ugly, they feel rejected, they don't feel popular enough in the group. So they want to do something to be cool. So you want to explore, what is it? What is it that attracts you to this? What do you want to accomplish out of this? Instead of telling them no, after you validate their feelings and their emotions, and that doesn't mean that you are agreeing with them. We have to be careful, because when we think as parents that when we validate your point of view, that we are giving you permission, right?
Yeah, right.
And just to tell you, the parents that talk to the kids about their expectations, the rules and consequences about drug use are the parents that those children will stay away from drugs. When you clearly lay out what are the rules, the consequences. And you also say, because I love you and I care, I need to have this conversation. It's not because I say so, you need to do X, Y, and Z. It's because I care and I love you. I don't want you to get in trouble. So yes, have that conversation and validate your child and say, thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about it without making any judgment at the beginning. Of course, then the conversation will go into, what are your expectations? Why do you don't want them to start using at an early age? And you can explain, the brain is not fully developed at 14 years of age or 16. Do you know when the brain is fully developed? At age 25,
right?
And you know do you know who knows this better than all of us? The car rental companies, because they wouldn't rent you a car unless you're 25,
That's right.
right?
That's good. That's a
But,
good.
you know, we think
Yeah.
kids, I mean, we all think, right, when we are in our early 20s, that we can do, our brains is still in the developmental process. So they don't want to, you know, they don't want to play around with that and have consequences for life, or worse, you know, get an addiction, because, you know, the parents can explain what happened when you start socially and then you progress to every weekend, and then it's not only every weekend but every other day, and then it becomes like a habit.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's a heavy topic. And this is so good to just encourage us to not be fearful to have these conversations. Exactly what you're sharing. You're equipping us to do that. We did receive a question from the audience, and this is good. We might have to do some research on this, or maybe you know off the top of your head, but are there any specific websites or resources online to learn the language that kids are using? Because I know it's like, I don't understand half the things they're saying anymore about normal things, much less about alcohol and drugs, because they use so many different terminology. But that would be something worth researching for sure.
Yeah, they are the NIH, the National Institute of Health, NIDA, Institute of Drug Abuse. They
Okay,
have they have flyers that they can send it to you for
great,
free. The
great,
National Institute of Health, the CDC. If you just Google different names for drugs,
great.
it will pop up
That's
easy.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I feel like on social media, you see things. I think even floating around about kids communicating in emojis and mean certain things. So I think a little Google search, we could learn a lot as parents out there for sure.
And we
But that's
want to
great.
say, you know, show me.
Yeah.
Oh, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Be curious rather than I want to know what you're doing. Be
Yeah.
curious about it. You know,
Yeah.
I want to know what this means to you and to the rest of the world, right?
That's good. That's good. We've got another guest who's asked, what about when our kids question us? Like, well, why do you drink? It's a good question.
That is a very good question, because you know a lot of alcohol is popular. It's in almost in every household. Actually, I've seen some models lately that are posting that they are 6 months no drinking. I think is very good. That
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
they're promoting the message that even though alcohol is legal, does a lot of damage to families, to
Yeah.
people in general. So yes, when they say that, when they ask you that, you say, you validate, that is a valid question. I'm glad that you worry about me. But the difference here, and you need to explain this in a calm way. You don't want to say, well, because I pay the bills and you live under my roof and I do whatever I want. Of course you do, and you have every single right, but you also have a right to drink and to smoke, even though it's not appropriate, right? Because we
Right.
teach by example. So you can say to your child, unfortunately, I really want to quit, but I can't because I started at your age. That's why I don't want you to do it now, because it's been very difficult for me to stop the cigarette smoking, for example. If
Mhm.
they drink, they drink on weekends, I imagine, right? They can say, that's a good suggestion. I'm going to try to cut down. I'm an adult, my brain is fully developed. I can have a drink here and there, because I have responsibilities. And but I wouldn't like for you to start. Number one, it's illegal, right? Until the age of 21, you cannot drink. So you can give reasons why, and validate, instead of getting defensive, because sometimes we do that as parents.
That's good. Thank you. And to those of you who wanted to know those resources, I see that Patty has put those in the comments for us. So there's some links there. And then at the end of our time, we'll have a screen that you can screenshot to have all those resources. So I just wanted to call your attention to the chat if you want to get those resources there. Okay, so let's talk about what are important things to know in order to prevent adolescents from engaging in drug use, alcohol use, sex, and other potential risky behaviors.
So what are the things in terms of what do we say to them, or?
Yeah, just are there any important things to know that maybe we're not thinking about? Obviously you've spoken so well to, addressing it as it comes up and not pushing it down the road and being very open. I guess maybe more into it. We've talked a little bit about drug and alcohol. What about, sex or other risky behaviors that adolescents are
Well,
exploring?
yeah,
Want to get into?
I think the foundation to all these conversations, honestly, is to, number one, have a good communication, a good, solid, frank, open communication with your children, getting involved in their lives, enrolling them in after school activities that are pro-social, where they're going to find pro-social friends with adult supervision, inviting the friends over, getting to know the parents of their friends. That is also very important. That we do it in elementary school, right?
Yeah,
We go to every single activity, but the moment they get to high school, it's like, oh no, and they don't want you, because if you are not a cool mom, they probably say, don't kiss me, don't come near me, near my friends, right? A lot of parents.
Oh, please tell me my babies aren't going to do that. I can't even take it on. No, teasing. I have little people, so I can't even go.
You need to make sure that you
I
don't
know the day's
embarrass.
coming.
I know that's coming. That you don't embarrass them when they are in front of the friends. Maybe you want to invite them and have pizza or something, or cookies. You don't have to have a lot of money to do those things.
Yeah.
And then having that conversation, getting involved in their lives. What are they doing? What do they like? What do they fear? That is the foundation to
That's a
talk
good question.
about the rest.
Yeah.
Talking about social media. I mean, we know the importance that our kids are exposed, no matter how much we want to control all of that. They can get any information they like up there, right? Or they want up there. So we want to say, I want to be the source of that. If I don't know something, we'll research it together. And we'll find it together. But I do it because I need to protect you. That's my job. That's the bottom line, right? But the communication has to be there. I think that is the foundation of everything to talk about sex and sexual health. Drugs and sexual health are the two most difficult subjects for parents to discuss with the kids, but the foundation is good communication skills with them and connection. You need to feel connected to them in some way.
That's good. You can't just show up for just the hard talks. You got to establish that all along the way. That's good. Anyone who's listening with little people, that's where we are is building that.
You got to earn it. I mean, they're going to push you away. They're going to say you're not a cool mom, that they don't want to see your face anymore. And sometimes we get angry because, we don't like rejection, right? They don't like rejection either. So we need to say, sometimes we have to lay down the law. It doesn't mean like, we're going to be friends. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
We need to also talk about consequences and what are your expectations as parents. What are the consequences? And let me tell you, when you ask the kids, what do you think it will be the consequences of whatever, if I see you drinking alcohol or smoking pot, they come out with much more harsher consequences than if you will do it. So have that conversation, engage into sort of a contract. What do you think is the time, if they want to go to a party, for example, that you can come home? And you can also tell them, for example, if you are at the party and you see something that is not safe, that we have discussed, that we have agreed upon, you're going to call me. And maybe you develop a code word, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Mom, is the dog in the house? And you know that you don't have a dog, right?
Yeah.
And then you can go and pick him up or her up, no questions asked.
That's good.
Because that adolescent trusted you. So something that she or he didn't feel comfortable in being part of the scene and call you to come and get him. You're not gonna say, I told you so.
Yeah.
You're gonna say thank you for what you did.
Yeah.
That's very brave and very mature. I mean, they love to hear that word, very mature, very brave of you.
That's good.
Call me and tell me the code word that you have in advance, right? When they don't feel safe.
That's good. We had that. I had that growing up with my dad gave me, he's like, you call me if this is what you say. And I never had to use the code, thankfully, but I even, I felt safe that I had that in my pocket, and it gave me this feeling of freedom, but also of security to have
or driving with somebody who's intoxicated.
That's right.
Because peer pressure, and you don't want to call your mom or your dad or you whoever, and come and pick me up. And the person that you went to the party was drunk.
Yeah.
So you want to have that trust.
That's
We
good.
say in Spanish, confianza, to say that to your mom or to your dad, come and pick me up.
That's great. That's great. Wow, this is good stuff. I can tell you're a therapist because you give such great language to everything, and just the communication piece is so important. And you're just giving us great, nuggets we can really take and enact in our lives and our relationships. So thank you for that. Let's talk about, and you spoke a little bit about this, but maybe elaborate more on the relationship between our child's peers and their potential to use drugs. Like, what role does peer pressure play in a child experimenting?
Crucial. I mean, I need to see, they are, but very few adolescents will initiate drug use by themselves in their rooms. Maybe there are few, but the majority of the adolescents that start using drugs is with a friend. I always say misery love company. So they want to have all the friends to share the experience and to laugh and to giggle and to, defy the society and the rules, because, that's part of also growing up. They need to discover who they are, and they take risk. And this risk is not the appropriate ones. We want them to take risk in a sport or, other activities. So friends are crucial. So it is important that you enroll your kids in pro-social activities, after school. It doesn't mean that they have to do it 5 days a week until 7:00 at night, but having something outside, or in the schools, there are clubs, there are, things that they can enroll where there is adult supervision and kids the same age, and they can make pro-social friends. I remember years ago, I had this mom who told me, "Oh, my son goes to the park to play a basketball." And I said, when I asked the park, it was a park in Miami that it was famous for selling drugs. And so she thought that because he was doing a pro-social activity, playing sport, but that was not a park that was supervised by adults. Yeah. So you have to be careful. You have to take the time. And I know these days parents are so overwhelmed with work and responsibilities and, you name it. So they may not have the time, but even if they do it in school, a club, something that is positive, something that they can.
When they're in a community of other people,
in a community of churches, or, YMCA or any other activities where they feel secure, safe, and they can meet other pro-social peers, because peers are crucial at this age. They all need peers. We all did growing up, right? Yeah. We need to have friends. I mean, it is awful for a child to have lunch by themselves in the cafeteria because they don't have friends. It's very difficult for them not to have friends at this age.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So they're willing to experiment with things
and if they are not popular, right, or they don't have the friends that they expecting, they might go into this other crowd, the wrong crowd that is pulling them in. So we have to be careful. Friends are crucial. And also the parents of the friends, right? You want to know who are they hanging around with. And maybe you can support each other and create a support system.
That's good.
Because we're busy, but we want to trust the parents as well.
That's right. That's right. Oh, that's good. On that note, we received a question from our audience, and this is interesting. So help us with how to navigate this conversation, but especially Hispanic families, when they go to their countries of origin, and, in some places drinking is legal at 18, Italy, 14. What do you do? How do you have that conversation when they see maybe their cousins or family members drinking and it's legal for them, in their country? How do you kind of have that conversation?
Right. And the key is legal, right? Yeah. Because, they are the legal ramifications of this can be potentially deadly. Let's say somebody's at your house, they drink and they leave and they get killed because they were drinking. It's your responsibility, at least in some of the states in the United States. It's not the same thing in Mexico or any other countries in South America, the Caribbean, or even in Europe, right? Yeah. So it's not the same. The law is different in the US versus other countries. Another thing that is important to say is that here in the US, we have a lot more cars. Teenagers can drive at a very early age. You don't see that a lot in Latin America or
Yeah.
in other countries. So, and you also need to say that the younger you start, the chances that you're going to get hooked and you're going to like it and you're going to continue, not only with the alcohol, but you might progress to have the same effect with other drugs, marijuana, and then, you can escalate into other more deadly stuff.
How can we tell if, our teen would be using drugs or alcohol? Are there any signs or behaviors to kind of look out for?
Yeah, that is good because every parent knows the child better than anybody else.
That's right.
So at this age, we have a lot of mood swings with the teenagers. Sometimes they're moody, they don't come out. Those could be normal things. But if you see a steady pattern of behavior, for example, the kid is not doing their homework, you're receiving notice from teachers that is not turning in the homework, is not even coming to class and skipping, or you see that the teen is sleeping a lot more. You also look for physical signs. They get grouchy. They don't want to do any activities that they used to enjoy before. Those are signs that something, they sleep a lot. Not the normal stuff. Teenagers used to kind of sleep a lot, right?
Yeah.
But more than normal, like more than what a normal teenager will do, you might have a problem. So we don't want to get to that, of course, but you want to pay attention that this doesn't last more than 2 weeks. Sometimes it could be depression or anxiety that the child is hiding and then start using drugs and makes it worse. So yeah, if you see this pattern in your own child, because your kid, right? You need to say something, you need to pay attention. Maybe you need to take it to a professional. Maybe you need to talk to him and start talking about, rules and consequences and expectations. What do you expect? What is going on within? And that you open to talk about anything. What is bothering them? Because sometimes they use drugs for other reasons, like we say at the beginning. They might be feeling left out. They might have problems with friends. Maybe they had a boyfriend and the boyfriend terminated the relationship. That's devastating for some teens, right? That feels like, that on the top, they are on the top of the world with pain, right?
Yeah,
So that is important that you have those conversations.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. What about, okay, let's say your teenager told you that they drank or tried drugs at a party. How can parents handle that conversation, and what are some actions that they can take?
Oh my God, I'll be delighted if my teen comes and tell me I used marijuana or I drank at the party. You don't want to get alarmed. You don't want to, make a fuss about it. You want to say thank you again. Thank you for sharing that information with me. And like I said before, sit down and have this conversation. How do you feel? And more important, do you feel pressure to do it? Do you feel pressure to do this? And once you start engaging in that conversation, you're going to get a lot more than saying you grounded or, you're not going to go to another party ever again until you turn 18.
That's right.
You don't want to say that. You want to validate that child. Thank you for sharing that with me. Let's talk about it. And then you can say, sometimes we as parents, because we care and we love you so much, we may react strongly because that's our job. I had to protect you. And you may not like that because sometimes parents will do that. And it's okay because you do it out of love. If you hear a story of another child, you don't get so, rattled up into reacting, right? But when you hear that from your own kid, it's like, oh my God, and you can talk about expectations and you can talk about peer pressure, that you're going to feel the pressure to do this. Let's talk about your friends. How do you feel? Do you want to do this because you want to do it? I mean, because you need to also develop who they are and affirm who, the personality, because, they navigating very complicated years in their lives. We think, I hear parents a lot saying, the only thing you need to do is study because, I pay the bills and I do blah, 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 blah. But let me tell you, kids have a lot of pressure too. They have a lot of social media pressure. They have pressure from school. They have pressure from friends. they have a lot. They need to compete in a very competitive world. And it's hard at that age when you are still developing those neurons and connecting. It's difficult. If it is difficult for us that we have the experience, right?
Right.
Imagine how they feel for them.
Yeah, their brains aren't even fully developed, like you're saying, you know.
No, and we see, unfortunately, in this generation, they're very babyish.
Yeah.
They don't have the maturity that maybe the parents had because they had different circumstances growing up.
That's right.
They do.
Yeah, that's great. Dr.
So a
Tapia.
little empathy doesn't hurt. It
That's
doesn't mean that you're not going to have
some
consequences.
consequences, yeah.
Very important, right? You need to talk about consequences and expectations. So if you discuss that in a context of a good communication, and you say, here are my expectations about drug use or whatever it is, and then you discuss it and you come to an agreement, and then you talk about consequences. So when they break the rules, you don't have to scream and yell and make a fuss because it was discussed.
It's already discussed. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's great. Here's a question that we received from our audience. How do we navigate as parents, a friend who is a negative influence, but saying you can't hang out with them seems to only have the opposite effect. So kind of how do you navigate that?
I always say, maintain your enemies closer. The moment, time and time again, I've seen that when they say to the child, I don't want you to be dating this guy or this girl. Oh my God. They're going to
I'll show you. Yeah.
The opposite. So you want to say, well, bring your friend home. You want to have supervision. Very important. What do they do together? Who are the parents? Maybe this child is not as privileged as your child is that has a mom and a dad. Maybe this child lost one of his or her parents. So we need to see the circumstances and allow that, and maybe discuss, what is attracted to you about him, because he might be a child that is struggling, and maybe your child has a good heart. That could be one. Or the other one could be like, he's the only person that pays attention to me because I don't have no friends. Whatever it is, you want to discuss it, and you want to say, what do you look in a friend? What are the qualities that you look for in a friend, right? Some people would say that makes me laugh, that I can trust. You want to hear that. And then maybe you want to invite that friends to the house. If you see, however, that this friend is going to be so detrimental, you need to sort of put boundaries there just to make sure that your child doesn't go into the wrong path. But more than likely, when they start to hang around with them, they realize that they don't have a lot in common. And then you create other opportunities, like I say, with pro-social friends.
That's good with the ones too.
So they can meet other people.
That's great. That's great. Oh, it's so helpful to hear from you speaking on these topics, because it's so easy as a parent, even I'm not quite to that stage yet, but you kind of play in your mind how you think those conversations are going to go. And like, it's going to be like this, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this. And I'm like, oh, like, okay, you're giving great perspective of ways to shift just the conversation completely and to front load so much of it so that when that comes, because we're all going to face it at some point, that we've done some of the pre-work on the front end by having those conversations early on. So this is great, Dr. Tapia. Thank you. I'm watching our clock. We've got about 15 more minutes. We're going to finish here right at 9. So if you have a question for Dr. Tapia, please drop it in. We still got a lot of questions to ask you, but I just want to let you know as you're listening, if you've got a question, drop it there in our Q&A feature. Okay, let's talk about this. And you spoke a little bit about it. If a parent smokes, drinks, are they sending the wrong message to their kid, or what about they allow their teenager to have a glass of wine at the holidays or a special occasion? Like, is that sending a bad message about consuming alcohol, too early in life? How would you?
Yeah, well, every family and every parent will have their own values, their own rules. So you have to respect that. And if the parent feels like it is safe to taste the beer here with me and have that conversation, I think it's fine. I don't think that by allowing them to do that, you're giving them permission to use drugs, or alcohol or whatever it is. But you don't want to just open this up and say, yeah, it's okay for you to drink. You can say, well, I'm going to satisfy your curiosity if it's okay with you, right? Some families may say, no, I don't want alcohol because I don't drink. I don't have alcohol in this house. We have parents that say, I was an alcoholic and I struggled for years to keep this habit, and I don't want you to do it. I don't want you to do it until 21. Is that realistic? We don't know. But, it's up to every parent and every household, depending on the rules. I remember when I was a child, my father said, you want to taste the beer? And I tasted it, and I think I was 8, and I hated it. I hate the flavor. And that was the last time until I, got older, of course.
Yeah.
But I didn't like it. But I was just thinking maybe, and I did the same with my children. You want to taste it? Well, taste it here with me. And they, some kids will say, yeah, it's good. But then you talk about the consequences of drinking and driving, and the damage that you can do, and the consequences if he drinks.
Yeah, that's good, because they're not always thinking about that, all those consequences.
No, they are invincible,
Yeah.
indestructible. They think life, they don't, unfortunately, it's like you said, the brain is not developed, and they don't see the consequences and the dangers. They don't see it.
Yeah.
That's why they take the risk in playing those hardcore sports, because they don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The older I get, the more I see all the things. I'm like, I don't even know if I can get on the roller coaster anymore. There's so many dangers out there. That's so true. That just as our brains develop more. Okay, talk to us about, this is a situation a lot of people face, but families that are divorced, how do you handle these conversations? Maybe, mom has one opinion and dad has another, and how do we come together united if there's, differing opinions on this?
That is a very good question, because it happens often. Parents put their own animosity instead of, working together with the child. I think you need to put your differences aside and talk to your parent and say, to your husband, spouse, or whoever, and say, I'm worried, and I want you and I to be on the same page when it comes to giving him a united message. Now, if one parent refuses, you're going to put the rules in your own household without putting the other parent down, without, talking bad about the other parent. You say, well, here are the rules in my house, and this is what, what we're going to do. And the child say, well, I can drink at my father's house. I mean, that is something that then maybe you need to put your differences aside, the conflict aside, and talk to the other parent and say, we believe that 99% of the parents want the best for their children. And sometimes even in the worst circumstances, they tend to agree that drugs and alcohol are not the answer. So if you put your differences away and say, I need to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
And it might work. But if it doesn't, for whatever reason, you want to put the rules clear in your own household.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's great. What about, we haven't talked about this yet, but what about the role of older siblings, and what does that play in younger siblings' use of drug and alcohol? Because, like everything, you have little people and they're exposed to screen time sooner than the first one was, because you're just moving faster now. So how does that relate to the drug and alcohol topics?
Yeah, that is a common question, because let's say you have a 21-year-old that can drink in the house, right, legally, and you have a 17-year-old that they're very close in age, and it's not the same, right? We need to talk to the older siblings and explain their role, that they are a role model for the younger ones, and be clear about your expectations and what you expect, in the house. Yeah, often they play a role because they supervise. They often are alone with them, and the younger ones might smell marijuana, and they know what they're doing. So it's important to have this conversation as well with the older siblings, and also with the younger one, and say, this is not acceptable. I'm struggling with this, and sometimes we've seen it, unfortunately, in families that one kid, even though they were raised in the same household, one takes one path and the other one takes the other path, unfortunately. But clear rules, consequences, good communication. I think those are the key things.
Yeah, I see that as the theme just all evening and in our time together. It's very good. Thank you. A couple things from our audience. One is, how do you address the concern regarding marijuana laced with fentanyl? I know that the fentanyl is such an issue now. And this viewer asked, like, should parents get Narcan just in case? Narcan, forgive my ignorance. You can speak to that.
Yeah. Well, it's been very popular lately in terms of giving kids pills, like the ADHD pills that the kids sell. Sometimes they sell it and they are prescribed, or they take it from the older siblings or whatever. Yeah, to talk about the dangers of fentanyl, because those pills are deadly. And if
Mhm.
they, by any chance, buy it, they have to be careful. You need to also talk to your kids about engaging in the internet and maybe buying things from the internet that aren't safe, and talk about that those have serious consequences, death. I mean, we are not talking about an overdose only, but death.
Mhm.
So it is important that you address that that can happen. They lace it with different things, even with the marijuana, the way they vape it, or pills. So you don't know what is in those pills. So you have to have this conversation
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
with the children to be, careful about that.
Mhm. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
just
and we're seeing an epidemic of
yeah.
death increasing between 14 and 18-year-olds when it comes to fentanyl.
Mhm.
So it's an important conversation to have.
Definitely, definitely. We could go on and on about this. I attended just a city hall meeting at one of the, I'll say, cities, suburbs of Miami, and the police chief was there, and he was sharing how these kids are having parties, and they're collecting whatever they can find at home from their parents' cabinets or this or that, and they throw it in a candy bowl, and it's kind of like, grab what you can get, and you think, goodness, you
Yeah.
just don't know what you're getting. And so it's so dangerous. And we've got to ourselves stay educated so we can have these informed conversations with our kids, but keeping
They
them.
take it from grandma. I mean, the
Yeah.
medicine that grandma is taking, and
Wow.
take it to the parties. So it's important to have. I think when you have a good, solid relationship with your children, the chances. I mean, I always say you minimize your chances. It doesn't mean that the child is not going to experiment,
Yeah.
but if you have a good, they're going to think, "Oh my God, I'm going to hurt my mom," and they
Yeah.
might not do it. I mean, if they have that close, tight relationship with at least one of the parents, or maybe an older sibling, they
That's
might
right.
stay away, right, from
Mhm.
the drugs if it happens. But when they don't feel connected to anybody in the family, that's what
Mhm.
happens. They tend to, experiment, whether it's because parents work too much, or whatever, whatever it is, they tend to navigate towards doing risky
Risky
behaviors.
behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Tapia, this has been so enlightening. I've got just a couple more questions, but I do want to share. One of our audience members just said, "Thank you so much, Dr. Tapia. This has been so informative and so helpful." And I've been watching. Our audience has been so engaged the whole time. So those of you that are listening, I hope you're encouraged and are learning a lot and being empowered as a parent to navigate these hard waters of these difficult topics. But I'd say let's wrap up with talking about this, because I think you could give us great info on this as you have with all the questions. But when is it appropriate to visit a professional for drug use in teens, and what kind of professionals are out there that can help us and help our adolescents in a situation like this?
Yeah, well, mental health people, psychologists, social workers, other mental health professionals in the schools are people that the parents can go and talk with them about their concerns, what they see, and also for the kids, when you see signs that is lasting more than 2 or 3 weeks, the grays are sleeping, they are not
Mm,
engaging with you, they seem angry, out of
mm,
character, anything, you know your child, anything that you see that is out of character, that is lasting more than a month, and there is nothing physical there, or what is going on in a school, there's something going on that is affecting that child, and we need to get to the bottom. So you try to do it on your own, and when you see that things are not improving, you don't want to let that go for more than 2 or 3 months without maybe asking for professional help, and
yeah.
seeking out professional help, and also tell your child, let's talk to somebody, or maybe you want to go first and talk to a therapist
Yeah.
and see what's bothering you inside if the child doesn't want to share that with you.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
You spoke earlier to this, just, I think when you were talking about if you find out your child is the experimenter, had alcohol, to not just consequence immediately, but to dig a little deeper. And I kind of think, maybe the experimentation is just a fruit of a deeper root, of something, whether that's insecurity or trying to fit in or stress at home or whatnot. So I think you just bring up such a great topic and sharing that. And, and it's nothing wrong with seeing a professional to get those insights and just to be able to have those conversations with other people. So that's why we love doing what we do here, because we get to sit with the experts. I feel like I have the best seat in the house because I get to just interact directly with you, and I'm learning so much every time we gather. But Dr. Tapia, thank you for your help tonight and your wisdom and insight. I want to end with just one question, and you spoke a little bit to it just now when you mentioned about school and, of course, our kids being connected in activities. But is there a link between, my child and my connection with their school and their likelihood of using drugs or alcohol?
Yeah, they need to feel connected to school. That's why engaging in after school activities, I think, is crucial. Something where they feel that they belong there. Because otherwise, they're going to engage, they're going to disengage from classes, they're going to be bored. And what are they going to do? They're going to hang around with the kids that, don't want to learn. So you want to make sure that they like school. If they don't like school, well, you need to find a tutor, you need to go to the school and see if there is a remedial club. Talk to teachers.
Yeah.
Talk to counselors in school. I mean, these days we have the wonderful internet with the portals there that you can communicate. I mean, I remember in my days, I would show up at my school, my kids' schools at 7 a.m. when the teachers are sort of settling. And
That's right.
when I got it. But that was years ago. Now the teachers, you need to communicate via internet. But the more you call, the more you make yourself available in the school, the less likely that a child is going to disengage from the academic world. Maybe that child is struggling with other things, developmental disabilities. So you need to find the appropriate resources. And I know it's hard when we have to work all day, but you have their resources, and you can communicate, with your phones, with your computers at home, to the portal. It is crucial that the child feels connected to school in the prevention of drug use. Yes.
Thank you, Dr.
And
Tapia. This
3
was
hours in the school.
so encouraging. Yes. And I hope, parents, caregivers, those of you who've been listening in tonight, I hope you're leaving with at least a little, if not a ton more confidence to navigate these issues with your kids. These conversations are so important. That is really just the heart behind parental guidance and what we offer here. So third Thursday of every month, which means Thursday, May 18th is going to be our next time to gather. If you